Hello, 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 and welcome to WRPC Tier 3. And today we return once again on a lovely Monday evening. It's a little bit rainy outside, but luckily you are watching us here once again for season number 22. I had to double check and look because I'm a bit special, but Today, yes, you can see Hyper is alongside me, but he's not actually alongside me. I am joined by Welterum tonight. How are you doing?
I am good. It is, as you said, not the greatest evening outside, but surely a great evening with WOR Season 22 on our hands. It's great to commentate Tier 3 again, though the one race ended up getting pushed back due to some server errors, but I did step in. So it'd be interesting to see what these drivers can do in a full race that I get to commentate.
Yeah, hopefully. Maybe you're a jinx. Who knows? Maybe we'll have another one. But with that, let's have a look. Tonight we go to none other than Mexico City in Mexico. 4.304 kilometers, 2.674 miles, 17 turns, 3 DRS zones down the pit straight, then down the sort of, I guess, second straight, and then down the back straight, of course. No elevation. This track is completely flat, which is actually surprising. This track is completely flat. Of course, you've got, for me, my favorite part of this track is that S section from turn 8 to turn 11. It is just so brilliant. But you also got to add in the stadium section as well. That I believe is from turn 12 onwards through to the final corner, actually, because it goes from turn 12 to turn number 16. So, with that, let's have a look at the calendar. We've gone through Las Vegas. We pushed back Great Britain. We went to Monza, I believe it was, and Saudi Arabia last week with an absolute brilliant race at hand. And this week we come to Mexico. Then, looking at the standings, I said about how crazy it was last week. Don't mind this appalling graphic that I've put together. I should be doing better. But Enzo Sabaton continues to lead the championship after an incredibly tough week last week, finishing 15th in Saudi Arabia. Jan Svidilic catches up with being the first driver to get 2 podiums this season, another P2 finish for himself for the Sauber. Just 3 points behind them is Daniel Goshok with a very consistent finish, along with also Nailgout, who also sits just 3 points behind. So 3 points splitting the top 4 in the Drivers' Championship after the opening 3 races of the season. Abdullah Bulaich might have crossed the line in first, but ultimately he received a penalty for spinning around Oliver Knott on the final corner, on the final lap of the race, and caused him to drop down to P10. And Oliver Knott, of course, finishing P11 at the end of last week's race when he was leading into the final corner and he got spun round. So it's a very, very interesting race. I have some questions for you, Weltrum. What do you think about Mexico?
Mexico can be quite a shocker of a racetrack on these F1 games. You've got that huge main straight, but with the game's efforts at trying to create realistic aero performance, it makes the slipstream effect so weak that you just burn so much battery. And with that second straight being based on the same DRS of the first one, if you get past, it just lets you just pull so far ahead that it just makes the overall racing quality dip quite a lot lower and makes the overtakes quite simple to be made.
As I said, it's not just the straights to this track that make it difficult. There's things like track limits and stuff, but that S section we've seen in previous seasons, it's caught out drivers, especially on last year's game. Quite a few spins we had when we went there. I think the most difficult section, though, to me is that hairpin in the stadium section. I think, to me, that is the hardest. That is the hardest section, I think, and the hardest corner on the entire track. I think it catches you out because it's so soon after the previous corner, after turn 12. I could see where there's a bit of confusion going on between everybody because there's some drivers who are missing. And one driver can't seem to connect, and that's Jonas Orpel, who's struggling to connect. So, going into this race, we've got the top 4 split by 3 points in the championship. I think qualifying, of course, is going to be a big sort of showing for who's where. Who do you feel at the moment sort of is looking strongest in the championship?
You've got Enzo and Jan, who are both strong at the top. And in terms of consistency, though, now Gout definitely up there with 4th, 5th, 4th. But you can't factor out the likes of Oliver Knott, 5th, 8th, and would have been 1st. In that Ferrari, definitely could have been shot way up the standings into that top range. So it will be interesting to see if he can actually try and replicate that performance or even just get some decent points here at Mexico. But definitely in terms of consistency, looking at Enzo, looking at now Gout, and looking at Claudio, who has only got 1 win, to see if he can replicate it if once he is back here again.
I think I agree. You know, he's back here tonight. Will he be able to? Will he be able to replicate another victory? Maybe, maybe not. Of course, we are low on drivers tonight. We're on 16 at the moment. We should be having 20, which I'm not sure why we just have 16. But a couple of drivers who've had interesting races. Spezzi is one of them. The driver, though, who's had a very interesting season up to this point is Daniel Goshawk for me. In previous seasons, he's always been sort of a bit more of the underdog, occasional top-class performances, and then having a couple of tough races. So far this season, I don't think he's really put a foot wrong. Same for Nail Gout as well. Well, as I believe it's meant to be Nail Zhu, I believe, by my understanding of French. But I will say Nail Gout for the moment because I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, from what I remember back from that Silverstone race, Enzo, Daniel Goshawk, Nel Gout were at the top of the race standings going towards the end of that race that ended up only being half distance and then cancelled off. So these drivers definitely can perform even under situations where the race doesn't quite finish off and give them the points. As you said, it's going to be back in at round number 10. And you will get to see that track in this season 22 for tier number 3. Though I do hope the race will be a bit more interesting than that short version was.
Hopefully, but yeah, I think it's always going to be an interesting one. Of course, Mexico, quite a different track from what we've seen in. You know, I think it's always been quite an interesting one. You know, when it comes down to track-wise. But we are getting into qualifying. Of course, it is an 18-minute qualifying session followed by a 50% race, which I believe is 36 laps or 34 laps, I think. Something around that. I did not look, which is why I'm guessing. But I know it's more than 30. I do know that.
Yeah, I think it's in the 30. I think it's in the 34 ballpark range.
I think it's 34. And we are finally in and are able to show you on track for this evening. We're going to be waiting, of course, to see when the first driver comes out on track. Of course, you could see the track map in the bottom right. You know, nicely showing you the track layout. Of course, once again, during this entire stream, you guys can see that at the bottom. You can also see the DRS zones, DRS detection zones as well. 16 drivers in. Interesting season for some of the drivers. Bennett Hayder, Nail Gout, Ivan Santamaria, Jonas Orpel. You know, it's been pretty interesting all round.
Yeah, as you see, the Aston Martin and the Mercedes first out onto the track. Going to be interesting to see what these drivers can put in as their baseline lap times, but the track will ramp up as the session goes along. But sometimes getting some clear air, even on an early lap, can get you a solid position that can drag you to the end of this with comfortability to set in those faster lap times.
4 cars out onto the track now. With Boba, as we watch him go around on his outlap, we've then followed by Lucas, then followed by Jonas Orpel, and then followed by Daniel Goshawk. You know, we're going to see when, of course, Boba's on his flying lap, sort of the perfection you need around this track. You can't have one corner go wrong, because this is one of the tracks that I say is always one of those odd ones where if you mess up one corner, the whole lap is messed up. You know, because I think, you know, you look at that first sector and the second sector, you know, you make one mistake and you immediately lose 2/10 because of that mistake. You know, it's a big loss on every single corner. Same with this hairpin, places like that. But Boba is making his way round to start off his lap. And you know what, Walterum, how about you commentate this lovely flying lap from Boba?
Rounds the final corner, widens out the exit to straighten up as early as you can. Open up DRS and deploy that battery. You're heading to a very hard braking zone going into turn number 1. So you can just ounce as much out of it as you can. Brake heavily, use all of that track width. It's quite lenient at this circuit. As you said, got to hit these back-to-back corners as cleanly as you can, as it's so punishing if you get a poor exit. But it seems like he's already backed off of the traffic around as Lucas comes on by on his lap instead.
As he makes his way through into the middle sector, we'll pick up where we left off with Boba through the double right hand. Of course, you need to get that corner right or you can lose a good old 10th.5. Now heading up to the S section, my favourite part of this track, through the left, over the grass a bit there. Through the right, through the left again, and now you've got another tighter right and a tighter left, making sure not to go over the curb too much and get invalidated. Now heading down towards the end of the middle sector with the DRS into this tight right-hander that's actually a lot tighter than a lot of people think it is. Now into the hairpin. We spoke about the hairpin. It's definitely the hardest corner on the track, but Lucas nails it like a champion, and now making his way round up towards the line he goes, and it's going to be a 1 minute 14.033 for the first time of this evening.
Yeah, decent, solid effort on that first lap. But coming in from Lucas in that 114 range, potentially going to be seeing mid to low 13s if people can find some good slipstream down that big main straight. But it's going to be reliant on a huge effort of just getting good timing on the slipstream, but no one will probably actively try and give each other slipstream here. As you can see people having slides for the S's already on their laps in the background of other people's, and track limits, though they are arguably lenient at this track, people push that leniency so much more aggressive that it's more likely that they actually get these track limits excursions, especially through those tight S's.
I do agree with you there. Looking around, we've just seen Jans Fidilic go second there. Of course, chasing the championship lead at the moment. He's gone second, but he's a far 3/10 away. It's Enzo Sabaton, the championship leader, goes to P1, provisional pole. 1 minute 14.013, only finds 200ths of a second over Lucas.
That's what you love to see. Huge, tight margins already in this early stage of qualifying. Obviously, the track's going to go ramping up through as the cars keep on circulating and the time whittles down. But with a gap that close between the leaders already, as Claudia also within that 4/10.5 margin, settling in for quite an interesting front of the grid already if it stands as is.
Diego Ferrer as well coming across the line. He goes into P4, 14.1. You can see there's a bit of a gap at the moment between that top 3 and the rest. About 10th.5 currently sitting in it between everybody. Now, Gout, we said about his incredible levels of consistency across this season. And he's P5 once again. He's already got in that position before, and he's P5 here at the moment off of his first run, but a 14.272 puts him about, yes, an incredible quarter of a second behind provisional pole.
Yeah, some of the drivers with the more consistent form then found further down the field at the moment, not necessarily shooting up to the top of the timesheets, where these drivers who have only done a couple of races or have some standout results, ticking it to the top of the timesheets. Claudia with that one result so far being a win, back here again, sets in the solid time, and Diego Ferro stepping into that second Alpine, trying to bring them a good result and keep that team at the top of the constructors' standings.
Just waiting to see who's next to actually cross the line, because you can see there's a bunch of on-track chaos going on between everybody. Everybody's battling a bit over track position. If you look in the final sector, you can see Nail Gout making his way round. Then we've got Daniel Goshawk, who's also going into the pits, just trying to get ahead of Boba in all of that. But we do have Jonas Orpel, who is starting his lap. He's the only driver currently out on track. Everybody else in the pits alone out there. Clean air, free track. He can push it all he wants. Now, into turn 1. Looks very solid. That RB looking stuck to the ground at the moment. No problems through the first 3 corners. Looks very nice through those 90-degree corners. Now, up towards turn 4. You've got to get this tight and close. Into turn 5. Again, another hairpin style corner. Then into the double right-hander. We've gone through turn 6 and 7 there. Now up towards turn 8 to start off the S section. You throw the car into turn 8, through turn 9, through turn 10. Then 2 more corners through turn 11 and 12. Looking incredibly strong from the RB. No real mistakes so far. And it's going to be a 55.221 for the middle sector. Now through into that turn number 13. Turn 12, sorry. And now going through this final section to reach turn 16 before reaching the final. Turn 17 through, and away he goes across the line. And it's going to be P5 and a 1 minute 14.254 to end off his middle run. But of course that means he is running alternative runs from everyone else. Which means he might not be able to get in all 3 runs. Or he will be able to, maybe not 4 though.
Yeah, potential margin to get in 4 lap times with these low 114s if they just come straight out of the pit lane on rotation. Not done so far by everyone. A little bit of delay for people to come back out on track for their second laps compared to the ones who went out early on that first lap, though. So I'm probably only going to be seeing 3 laps from the ones who do push it around. But a decent time from Jonas Orpel. He set a middle purple sector with that clear air that he got, but clearly losing out something on the straights compared to the others.
There's definitely something in it. First driver, actually, who's out on track. Who is it? It is Boba once again. Boba coming out for these runs once again this evening. Interesting to see, though. Definitely interesting to see him out again so quickly. I expected to be waiting a little bit longer to see him out on track.
Yeah, currently with a double DNF and a P8 finish, netting him some 4 points currently down in P number 15 in the standings. Wanting a better weekend here as the lobby host in that Aston Martin. But it's all going to be based on how he can qualify. It's got to be a little bit of a step up compared to what he's produced so far, as he heads towards turn number 1 to start his lap time. This time around, got to keep it clean, not back out of it like we saw last time. This is where he did, but so far, continuing his lap on the track and pushing towards the second heavy braking zone, turning it in tightly onto the left-hander with a purple sector 1 coming on through, potentially running a little bit less aero, so it might be a little bit of a sacrifice he runs through this section of the track as he uses the track width, and again, he's going to push to the edge, doesn't get invalidation, and has a clear run through the S's, tight onto the corners and tight again through, but doesn't get invalidated, so it's clean now on this final DRS run, and it's a second purple sector flagging up. But the game UI sometimes does mistake these purple sectors flagging up, so we'll be to the line where we will get to find out as he rounds into the final long corner, but he's going to short shoot to the finish, deploying that final bit of ERS, and it is to the top. First one in the below the 114s with a 1:13.946, and that's what he wants to be able to get himself into this championship fight.
That's exactly what he needed, and across the line, Jans Verdilic as well goes up to P5. He finds 0.2 of a second when he does finally cross the line. Ryan Grubb across the line goes P7. He finds another 10th himself in his lap. I'm waiting to see somebody else cross the line and find some time. I think Lucas just crossed the line, but he didn't improve on his run. So a bit of disappointment there for the Mercedes driver. He's still struggling a little bit with that. As Enzo Sebastian, what a lap from the Frenchman. He goes into provisional pole 1:13.751, 3/10 of a second faster than his first lap. Absolutely incredible driving so far. Tristan Janssen jumps into a 14.016 as he goes P3. Spezzi as well crosses the line following his teammate, but only does a 0.133, but he goes P7. You can see just 1/10, and it splits by 4 different places at the moment. Claudio's coming across the line. He goes P2 and finds a 13.835, so he finds an incredible lap time as well, so definitely up towards just Enzo and Claudio at the moment.
Yeah, track ramp up definitely coming on through huge improvements. 3/10 by Enzo, 2.5 on Gladio's lap time, and more lap time seemingly being found as the time keeps on ticking. And it's still got 5 minutes left for people to find even more time.
Yeah, 5 minutes, but remember, 5 minutes is only enough to get one run in, and it means drivers have got to get in and quickly get out. Bennett Hader, he's having a tough session. Currently sits 7/10 away from provisional pole, so he's quite far behind. He needs over a 10th just to go up one place, so it's been a tough one so far for himself, as he has to. Oh, he's also having to wait in the pits for his teammate as well to go in. Bit of a tough one today for some drivers. Also, Nail Gout as well, not improving on his last run, so he's down to P11. So Mr. Consistent, no longer Mr. Consistent for now. Jonas Orpel, we said about him being on an alternative strategy, and he's once again out on his own, out on track, as he heads down towards turn 1 after that long pit straight. I cannot believe that is just one entire pit straight.
Yeah, though, as we get on the board with Jonas Orpel, Thomas Leminin and Ivan both need to find a lap time that doesn't get invalidated. Both sitting in P15 and 16 with no representative lap times, while Doug how do you say that one? Doug Zaneas. Also, 4/10 off the back of his Ferrari teammate down in P number 14. Ones to watch for improvements, but Jonas Orpel coming through the S's on a clear open track. It's going to be slow into sector number 2 with 2 seconds down.
Yeah, he's out of fuel actually, so he's just done a lap. He did actually just do a lap. Actually,
he improved into the low 15.
He found 3/10, so impressive lap from himself. Still a bit behind his teammate, but pretty close between the RBs. We have got a driver, though, coming out onto the track. That is going to be Nail Hout as he makes his way out onto the track. And I want to see something from this guy. I really want to see him do something special here tonight. You know, he's been kind of lucky but unlucky at the same time. Hasn't been able to reach that podium. 3 races of being inside of that top 5, but not able to reach the podium places. Maybe tonight, but at the moment it doesn't look like it because he's currently 11th. He needs to find 2/10 just to go up to P8 alone, just to gain 3 places. That's the gap at the moment. So if he can find a second, that would be brilliant. If he can find half a second, that'd be even better. But at the moment, he's not looking in a great place.
Yeah, only driver in the top 9 to have not stood on that top 3 steps of the podium, yet still stuck it down in 4th position due to that raw consistency, and that is delivering him some solid performances. But he does need a step up if he really does want to contest for this championship, and this might be his weekend to do it. But currently sat down in P11, as you've said, still has some lap time to find, and is 5/10 off of that of Enzo Sabaton at the leading of the field.
It's all going to come down to this, though. We're going to have to be waiting to see the final runs here. And now, it is Nail Gout on his lap. He is going to be experiencing some traffic, though, because, as you can see, Claudio Diaz has just come out onto the track, but he moves out of the way nicely. I do think we're going to see Nail Gout come across some problems into the final sector, because look at the massive train of drivers making their way through currently. He's got 2 Haas's and a Ferrari in front of him, so he has got some cars relatively close. But now, heading towards the end of the first sector. Is he up? Is he down? Where is he? He's up by 74 thousandths of a second. That's not what he needs. That's only going to be up to P10. So, at the moment, He's not looking too great out of his first sector. Definitely not where he wants to be at the moment on pace. You see yellow flags, by the way, in that final sector from all of the traffic. Slowly trying to get the gaps. Slowly trying to make sure that they don't get held up by anybody. Through the S section. Now, Gout goes, whoa, very, very close from the half. I'm not sure which one, but he's up by a quarter of a second. And that's the time that I was talking about that he needed to find there. Into the hairpin now. You can see a very different line between him and what we saw with Claudio and Boba. Very, very different lines through that hairpin. But now, heading up towards the line, it's going to be a 1 minute 14.0 as he jumps up to P7 here tonight. And it's not a bad lap time. I think the next driver is going to be Tuomas Lamminen, who's invalidated his lap time. He should have time to cross the line once again. But it is then a Red Bull, and it's Ivan Santamaria, who's not had the best of qualifying form on this year's game. We've seen last season he had some struggles, but let's see what he can do on his current lap. 55.1, so very fast in that middle sector. I've got to say that's sort of 2-3 tenths quicker than what we saw from drivers like Tristan Janssen and Jan Svidilic. And now, heading into the final corner goes Ivan Santamaria's qualifying is now over. Everybody crossed the line in time. And across the line, he goes up into P9.
Yeah, decent lap in the 114s, but not enough to send him to the top of the timesheet, as we've got some more people now crossing the lines.
And Boba crosses the line. He finishes in third. And Enzo Sabaton can't improve his final lap time, so he stays in provisional pole. Jan Svidilic, the man chasing the championship, fails to capture the chance he needed. Lucas finds some time and does improve on his final run and goes P3 in all of it. Darks and Nares doesn't improve and stays in P15. Somebody's just hopped up the order, and that was Ryan Grob who hopped up the order, and he goes to P4. Jonas Orpel stays in P6. You can see Youssef, I think, has just joined, and we're waiting for the next driver to cross the line. I think we've got Claudio who's crossing the line. He's improving by about a tenth of a second. Is he going to take pole position? Yes, he does! Claudio Diaz, the last man to cross the line. The last of the main group to cross the line, and the last of the front runners to cross that line. And he steals provisional pole, and sorry, not even just provisional, but pole by an incredible 0.2 of a second. So let's go through the order of the grid. Claudio is first, followed by Enzo Sabaton, Lucas, Ryan Grog, Boba, Jonas Orpel, Tristan Janssen, Daniel Goshawk, Neil Hout, Diego Ferrer, and then Ivan Santamaria, Spezi, Jan Svidilic, Tuomas Lamminen, Bennett Hayder, and Dark Zaneas in 16th and last. So everybody did end up getting a lap time. Sadly, my co-commentator, Welterium, has suffered a bit of a problem. Welterium, the fire alarm went off, so we will be waiting slightly for him, but he will return at some point, so we will be waiting for that. But he shall return. Talking about the race, strategy time. So it's gonna be very interesting to see. I'm very interested to see what's gonna happen. You know, I'm very interested to see what's gonna happen.
Seems like it has cleared on up, and I am back for the race.
You are back. You are back. So, strategy 1 to 2 stop, I'd say. I think it depends on what you're really willing to go for, what you're willing to risk. I can see a few of the drivers at the back starting on the mediums or hard tyres. I can see a very mixed grid, though. I think we'll see a mixed grid, but most likely we'll see a couple of harder runners and a couple of medium runners.
Yeah, obviously most people will just want to try and one-stop the race. It has been the strategy in the last few games, as it has been in real life, to just take away that variance unless the safety car gives you that free pit stop. To just go on that one set of tyres, it might be painful, it might be quite slow, but track position is king, especially in the DRS trains that have formed on this game so far this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's incredibly interesting. And I think it all depends on how much drivers want to push, how much everybody wants to go for it. You know, I think that's the main thing. I think that's really where we're going to see sort of strategy takeovers. You know, do they want to play mind games with the other drivers? Do they, you know, what do they want to do? We will be getting ready in any moment soon. We will be getting into the race. Make sure to tell me in the chat who your predictions are for the top three, the podium. Tell me who you think is going to get on the podium. And then at the end of the race, we'll see how that goes. And if you get it right, you get absolutely nothing. But you know, that's you get to be right. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think going into this race, I think it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what everybody goes for. This is a track though that's mostly about strategy and it's mostly about getting things right. And we are going in as 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights. And away we go here in Mexico for WOR season number 22. And it is round number 4. And it is a great getaway from Claudio, who leads towards turn 1. But there's a lot of drivers side by side. We're looking at 4 wide. 3 wide still, and there goes Enzo Sebastian off the track, cutting the corner. He gets a 3-second time penalty for cutting the corner. Ryan Grob takes the lead. Cars going absolutely everywhere. Now, heading down towards the end of the first sector into turn number 4. You can still see a lot of battling further back. Lucas trying to make his way past Enzo Sebastian. Enzo Sebastian on the inside. He was previously battling with Claudio Diaz into that corner. We can see 3 wide. Further back between Tristan Janssen, Jonas Orbel, and Ivan Santamaria. All the chaos is going on. It's just a little bit further back, and there we go. They slot into their order. Boba's going all over the place. Everybody is absolutely all over the place off of this race start. But the man who isn't all over the place, Ryan Grob, Daniel Goshawk. He's down the order. He's dropping through. Oh, he's spun in the wall.
Yeah, it's spin from Daniel Goshawk in the back of the field. Gets as a huge dive as well. Keeps on flowing through. This opening lap is running off of pure chaos. As everyone knows, they want to get as far up the grid as possible. And talking about risers in this grid, Ryan Grob up 3 positions off the start, straight into P number 1, and Nail Gout into P number 5, up 4 positions as we head to turn number 1.
Already a great start from our race leader, Ryan Grob. For the first time this season, he's actually found himself out in the lead. And it's the first time he's getting a bit of luck. Daniel Goshawk, though, well, championship contender, retires from the race out off of lap 1. Already one of the championship contenders out of that chance. Jan Svidilic outside of the points. Let's see what's going to happen. Spezzi is having a bit of a moment with Jan Svidilic. It's as soon as I say about him, but it is hard tyres versus medium tyres. I think I know which one's going to win. I think it's going to be Spezzi on those medium tyres as he goes up to P13. We talk about tyres. Let's have a look at them right now. It is currently mediums for half the grid and hards for the other half. So it's quite evenly splayed out, like I said it would be. I think it's pretty much equal in the amount of tyres. I think mediums have 8 and it's 7 for the hard tyres. So a little bit different there. Great start, like you said, from Ryan Grom up 3. Same for Nail Cow. Same for Bennett Hayder as well. But looking to the lead. Now in the lead by 1.4 seconds. But de-ice is enabled. And Lucas is looking to make up to that P2 place. But Claudio, I've got to say, he looks insanely fast down the pit straight.
Yeah, they definitely got a lot of speed down that fit straight, but it's the medium tire runners who are the massive gainers early in this race. Ryan Grubb gets the lead and Nail Gout up into P number 5, but Claudio is already cutting down that advantage down to the nearly 1 second already as behind. Cars are fanning across the track as Tristan Janssen sends it on the inside of Buba to try and get on the inside and does make it through. It seems like this tight little section at the back end of Sector 1 into the start of Sector 2 is where overtakes are happening more than down that huge back straight.
I do agree. And I think that move there just says it all. a nice move there. But Tumas Lamb also making his way up through the grid. Oh, he's having a bit of a battle with Bennett Hader there over P11. I don't think they're getting on too nicely.
No, as Ryan Grob gets back to the front of the grid, but Claudio still setting another fastest lap, chasing him down, does get that DRS flap wide open, and is going to be rapidly approaching this lap around, destroying that gap down to the 8 tenths margin, pulling everyone else in that huge DRS train along with him as the pace is starting to settle in this race.
Yeah, you can see all the drivers starting to get a bit more comfortable with their position. Not so much battling going on. I think everybody now focusing on the rest of the race. That's the way it usually goes, as you know. After the first sort of 2-3 laps, everybody calms down a little bit. They take a second, they breathe, and they get straight back onto focusing on their tyres, focusing on their ERS, focusing on the mind games going into the rest of the race. And that's what Claudio, I think, is very much doing here. He's going to start to play some mind games, use utterly brutal pace, which is what he's got at the moment. He's just so much faster than Ryan Grob. But at the same time, he's also just doing an absolutely incredible job at being, at playing those mind games. We saw it in Monza or Imola. I think it was Imola, I believe. I can't remember which one it was. But we saw it in Italy, and we're seeing it again here in Mexico. Here comes Claudio heading down towards turn 1 with that DRS, using every little bit of ERS he's got. He moves out to the right hand side. He takes that inside line and takes the lead. Oh, contact between Ryan Grob and Lucas over P2. Ryan Grob closing the door on the Mercedes. But is it going to be nice playing into the next corner? Is it going to be so much nice Lucas into turn number 4? No, it's not down the inside. He's launched it. He's trying to get Ryan Grob. He is trying to make the move, but still Ryan Grob has enough grip on those medium tyres. But the hard tyres quickly coming out as the faster compound already here on lap 5.
Yeah, huge tyre wear when you're in that dirty air, but also with Ryan Grubb pushing so much, he's going to wear them out so quickly as well. Might just stress them a little bit and got those tyres hot. And at Mexico, once your tyres get hot, they are so hard to cool back down. And Claudio already charging into the lead, and Luke's trying to capitalize on his overtake. Does get very aggressively down the inside and not quite significantly alongside. So Ryan Glob does close that door. Any investigation will be onto the stewards after the race, but not particularly anything too aggressive. This time, Ryan Grob will have DRS to help himself go down this back straight, but when you look further down, Spezzi comes into the pits already early in this race.
I think a strategic move coming from him, but look at Lucas. He's not going to make the same mistake twice, but he will. And contact between Lucas and Ryan Grob. And there goes Lucas up into P2. We can see more battling between Boba and Tristan Janssen over this P6 position. They've been battling for quite a while, and I think we've got a move happening further up in front. No, Enzo Sabata looked at the move, but didn't make it, and Boba makes his way up I can't speak, but he makes his way up into P6, and it is a great move from himself, and that is exactly what Boba would have been looking for this evening. But we've got to say, a man who's been very quiet is Nail Gout. He's just sitting here in P5, just quietly taking it, and remember, Enzo Sebastian cut the corner. At the moment, that would put Nail Gout in P4, and be another consistent finish.
Yeah, back already into the positions where he has consistently finished this season so far, and is staring down Enzo Sabaton, who will be dreading picking up that early race penalty, going through turn number 1 and 2, just forced off of the track, but the game slaps him with the penalty, classifying him as gaining an advantage, as we already see now Gout coming off of those medium tires, potentially massively huge tire wear. Yeah, as Ryan Grob is still struggling and is going to have to go very defensive into turn number 1, but Sabato doesn't have much, and it's just an absolute lockup that does allow Enzo to get on by coming back through, but he makes contact with that of Lucas SL, potentially giving him a little bit of floor damage, and Boba capitalizes as well, as that front wing on the Ryan Grob definitely took a little bit of contact there for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he took any damage from that though, so I think he's gotten away quite lucky there. But I do have to say though, Ryan Grob, maybe making a few too many mistakes as well. I don't think that lockup is going to help his front right tyre on tyre wear. I think he's just losing so much time now. To be honest, I saw the mediums going more to about lap 10 than about lap 7 or 8. So I've got to say, these mediums aren't lasting.
Yeah, the hard compound tire here at Mexico can be quite a lot better than that of the mediums. But if people are pitting this early in the race, they're going to be desperate for these tires to last them as long as possible. And it wouldn't be a surprise if Ryan Grob does pit in this time, but he does seem to keep on going. So clearly happy with how the car is underneath him at the moment. Even with that lockup on the last lap that we did see, but he is still going to be on the defensive compared to those in front of him. But it's already going further back that we have to look at action, as at the front, it's all just kind of single file while the Ferraris switch and change positions.
I've also got to say, look at this. Ryan Grob sitting and almost a second behind already within a lap.
Yeah, just drifting off of the back already on those medium tires. Does have that of Jonas Orpel and Tristan Jensen, who are on mediums as well behind him now, instead of these hard tire runners, who are definitely more comfortable at this stage of the race on those harder tires, but don't seem to be struggling as much with the wear at the moment. But I will say, Claudio and Lucas both did underfuel the cars. We don't know the margin, but potentially a factor that might be helping them keep these tires a little bit better.
I can see on the wheel. You can see on the wheel, by the way. If you go into
you
the
can.
podcast, yeah, you can. But yeah, so they're slightly underfueled. To be honest, with this track, you can save a lot of fuel. So I suspect there's going to be a couple of drivers who've gone for that underfueling, save time. Ryan Grob also outside of that 1 second. Now, that means he's just going to be the prey to the cars behind of Jonas Orpel and Tristan Janssen. You can already see Jonas Orpel all over the back of his gearbox already going into turn 1. As now Howe just put in the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 18.0, which, by the way, is a lot quicker than these guys are doing at the moment.
Yeah, the pace of those who have pit in that clear air is definitely going quick. As we are seeing a lot of defensive action across the field and people getting wary, but it's just all on Ryan Grob trying to put on a defensive maneuver and trying to hold on to what he has at the moment, as he is sliding through the S's, desperately trying to keep hold of this car. 1.8 seconds adrift of the top 4. And it just keeps on growing.
Yeah, he's holding up everybody else, and I think this is going to be a thing where I don't think a lot of people are going to really be happy with him at all, because the 2 second gap is very, very difficult to close. I know it is only lap 9 going on to lap 10 of this race, but is Ryan Grob going to go in? No, he goes for another lap. He's going on to lap 10. We could be seeing him pit this lap because he's already moving over to the right-hand side of the track, trying to get rid of that DRS, a little bit of weaving coming from himself. He's using all of that battery. You can see he's using a huge amount of battery. But anyway, Jonas Orpel has the pace, has the straight line speed, and down the inside goes Tristan Janssen. Look at this! Dive bomb out of nowhere, round the outside. Tristan Janssen still trying to go for the move. Oh my god, look at the Chaos front wing part going off of the car. That's off the Aston Martin of Tuomas Lamminen. Now into turn 4, down the inside. Out of nowhere! I don't even know who's fighting with each other anymore, because Tuomas Lamminen is battling with 2 cars at once. Into the double right-hander now. Tuomas Lamminen trying to go around the outside of Ivan Santamaria. We've already seen some brilliant battles between these two in the previous seasons, but it is Tuomas Lamminen who comes out on top for now.
Yeah, Tuomas Lamminen up 7 positions already. I was going to make a point about how he position is gained, and he's just made an absolute stonker of a move and made a finesse to make it work on Ivan Santamaria on the back end of it as well, and has capitalized on those held up. As you see Tristan Janssen trying to go back down the inside of Jan Suradik to try and get back at him, but it's going to be side by side. Got to be careful of the wall as it tightens up. but Jan's going to keep position at the moment. But Thompson now has potential to jump into the top 6 on the back of Ryan Grob, getting towards turn number 1. He has plenty of ERS to make it work on this lap, but he does have to face Ryan Grob with DRS, who's actually going to be sending it aggressively himself on the inside. But you do see the outcome from the Aston Martin. Ryan Grob not able to make anything on the, and as an impression onto Jonas Opel, as side by side now on the second straight, going towards the next braking zone. Is actually going to be 3 wide as Ryan Grob gets in front, but now Thomas tries to keep it on the inside as it switches back. A little bit of contact, forcing him wide. It's going to make Santa Maria slide on by. And Jan's going to also come on by as well. And it's going to be 4 positions lost in a span of a lap already for Jonas Opel as they gets forced off of the track.
Yeah, this medium tyre strategy just has not worked for anyone at the moment. But I've got to say, at the moment, it's really Ryan Grob who's coming out lucky right now, holding on to that P5 for now, and it just doesn't seem to be going his way at all. He just, like, it's going his way to some degree, but he's now 6 seconds adrift of the top 4.
Yeah, he's buying such a critical gap for this top 4 that it's only going to get neutralized if they get a safety car, as we see behind with that Ferrari 2 wide out of the final corner. All of them on top of each other now coming down the straight. Jonas Opel is down to P11 and he just wants it to be over. He wants to start making his way forward as into turn 1.
Look at this! Battle over P2!
Going through.
It is all going on.
And Ivan gets through behind Thomas Lemon, who also finds his way through. Ryan Grob losing out both positions into turn number 1, while it's now Jan trying to make it through as well. And it's him falling 3 positions to hard tire runners. And it really, really now seems like these medium tires are completely falling away, as Boba actually makes a move onto the Enzo Sabaton on the back end of sector number 1 as well, and is now on the back of Lucas, as the hard runners are still 6 seconds ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, we saw a bit of battle into turn 1. I think there looked like there was contact between Enzo Sabaton and Lucas through the first section, and you could see there's a few drops of rain actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, with these drops of rain hovering on the screen, it completely changes the game. Nailgel and Spezzy had a huge opportunity to gain on these drivers who are now battling desperately, as Nailgel's on the back of Bennett Hadder already on this change of strategy from him. But if it's going to rain, it's just going to drop them way out of position, and maybe that's why Ryan Grob and the likes are hanging on so much, but they do come into the pits this time round.
And the intermediate tyres, by the way, going on already for Tristan Janssen and for the rest. They're all going to the intermediates. To me, I think this is too early. It's way too early.
It might be a do or die on the tires. They've stretched them to lap 13 or lap 12 end already, and they might have just thought, we need to get off these rubber, and if it's going to wane, we're just going to slide all over the place on that high deg tire wear, especially with the way that they've been battling. But this is just going to favor those on the hard tires if this rain starts to pick up, but in a few laps rather than very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see, because if you look on board, you can just see there's not a lot in it. Like, look at the gap between Spezzy and his teammate Tristan Janssen. Not a lot of gaining at the moment between old tyres and fresh intermediates.
Yeah, but we do see Claudio coming into the pits. So does Lucas and Bubba. Enzo actually does stay out for 1 more lap, but we might just see the entire grid now dive for those intermediates. I do think the ones who stayed out for that 1 extra lap will gain, but Enzo still going around, and the rain still hasn't picked up desperately just yet, but he is very, very tentative on acceleration and will be losing track time.
Look back to Spezzy. Not to Spezzy, look back to Tristan. Look at how far behind he is. That extra lap has actually lost them a huge chunk of time. Look, they've even come out behind the next group in front. Enzo Sabaton gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. Down the inside goes Tristan Janssen on Ryan Grob. Round the outside. Battle for position over P9 here. Still, side by side, Ryan Grob getting himself in a lot of battles this evening with other drivers. I don't think he's going to be a very popular one after today. And into turn 4, round the outside goes Tristan Janssen trying to get past the Swiss driver. And in the end, can he get the move? The switch back from Ryan Grob. That changes to the inside for the double right-hander. Still, look at that, Tristan Janssen still there. He's still trying to push past, but in the end, he has to sacrifice P9 and go down to P10.
Yeah, as we're talking about these trial strategies, now that everyone besides Enzo is on these intermediates, the gap is 8.7 seconds to the top 3 provisional on that set of tires, and that one lap did gain them a 2-second margin. But it's just unfortunate that now Gout and Spezzi pit so early on in this race and have sat at the back of the grid. They've got a huge effort to make up for what their pit stop strategy has led them down at the moment.
Quickly look at him and look at how far back he's come out from the race lead. He's far behind. That
yeah, he did get overtaken. Yeah, and he picked up that extra penalty as well. So it's a net loss of 5 seconds at the end of this race. Once that extra penalty has been put on compared to the 2 seconds also seeing on track. Obviously, he can now chase that down if he can find the grip in these intermittent conditions on these intermediate tires, and it's a true test of skill and practice on these conditions now, as a lot of drivers are well more tested in the dry conditions.
Yes, I think this is the thing now. I think Enzo has kind of fully committed himself to finishing 4th. I think he's kind of fully committed to that now.
He's struggling through the S's on cold tires, drifting a little bit wide already as he's trying to warm up these tires in these cold conditions. Gonna be hard, especially on this track. There's not really any punishing corners until you get to the S's, and so you just drift wide if you don't get them up to temperature. And that gap to Ivan is 7.4 seconds for him at the moment, as Ryan Grob is trying to not be in any more action for once in this race, with a 1.1 second gap behind him, finally finding a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, I've got to say, Claudio's doing a brilliant job out there.
Yeah, no, he's actually pulled a 2.8 second gap after the pit stops, and that's actually opening up the margin for Bubba to actually fight that of Lucas and try and make a huge game in the standings. This is a huge turnout for Bubba at the moment. P number 3, but he's now trying to turn into P number 2, deploying that ERS vote in these intermediate conditions. He still sends it down the inside of Lucas as they drift through the corner, make a little bit of contact, and then sparks fly. He gets forced off the track, so he's going to hold it on, and he's still alongside, but in the acceleration zone. Lucas pulls out on top, and Bubba finds himself for a 3-second penalty.
Yeah, disappointing moment there, but for Lucas, that means he's P2, and that's confirmed. He's got that in the bag. He doesn't even have to really push now, does he? He can just, he's got such a massive lead, you know, he's got about 10 seconds. He's got over 10 seconds to 5th, the next driver without a penalty. He can just cruise it to the line now over the next 20 laps.
Yeah, now Gout makes a position heading into the S's, now into P13. Lots of positions. He was up into P number 5, which with these penalties, if he was able to keep on strategy, might have been a huge result for him. But obviously that's a 7-second gap that he would have had to fight for on those medium tires as well. But right now, he's got to look forward, got to keep his eyes trained and focused. But he does seem to have a decent amount of pace in that car at the moment.
Seems really strong, but the problem is it's just where he is. He's a few seconds away from P5. He needs that P5 finish to keep him in the championship chance. It will put him ahead of, he needs to get ahead of, I think the driver who's really won tonight is really Jans Verdilic, because he's P6. Like, where has he come from?
Yeah, he's just kept it out of trouble on a decent strategy, and he seems racy behind Ivan Santamaria as well. It's Enzo who's got the penalties at the championship lead, but Jan is actually finding his way forward after very bad qualifying from him relative to what we expect. And with Daniel Gottschalk having DNF'd already, this is just a huge chance for Enzo and Jan now to pull away in the championship lead. Yeah,
the only driver who could really challenge them is Nail Gout, but he is down in 13th at the moment side of the points. And I don't think he'll really be catching up by the end of the race.
With these intermediate conditions, it gets a little bit more down to when drivers make a mistake, as we see as the Aston Martin goes wide in front of Ryan Grob. That gap is now cut in half down to only 5 tenths. But without DRS, it's just down to the slipstream, which in this game is very, very weak. So it's a lot on the ARS management that you can afford, but in wet conditions, it tends to be a lot easier of a job. But Jan might have a little bit of a run trying to catch up, but it's not close enough this time around. It's going to be the case for almost everyone in the field.
Yeah, I think very much at the moment, I think we're not going to see many moves as long as the rain is around, because of one reason. And that one singular reason is that nobody really wants to risk it too much. Because, especially at this point, you know, we're reaching the midway point in the race. There's probably going to be one more stop to this race. Even with the intermediates, they won't last till the end. So, drivers will want to be keeping their race safe until those very few last laps.
Yeah, as you said, probably 2 pit stops remaining, and we don't know if this is whether it's going to dry up. As you said, we're only halfway through this race, so the track could rapidly get wetter or drier within the span of a few laps. As we saw that rain, it was only starting to come down, and then 3 laps later, we already see drivers desperately looking for those medium intermediate tires. And it's now just trying to survive this stage of the race as drivers decide, is the tyre wear just as bad on the intermediates, and do they have to get aggressive to make up positions?
It's always, you always have to be aggressive in wet conditions. It just depends on your wet weather skill, of course. I think that's something that we haven't sort of taken fully into account. It's how good each driver actually is in the wet conditions. And I know they're all decently close, but,
as you say about skill, Claudio is now up to a 4-second lead. He is showing his class in the intermediate conditions by pulling a huge gap for himself. And as we said, going in qualifying, 25 points is his only outing at the moment. P5 tied with Spezzi in the championship, but he's now staring down another win, and that's going to jump him straight to 50 points. And with Enzo and Jan not having great results at the moment, there's a chance that he jumps straight into P number 3.
There is a chance, but it all depends whether they can get it.
Now we are reliant on the drivers to try and find some kind of margin. You are seeing Ryan Grob slowly, but it's really, really slowly, get onto the back of Thomas Laminen in P number 7. And it's got to be said, Ivan, Jan, and Thomas on those hard tires made huge gains in this race so far. +6 for Ivan, +7 for Jan, +7 for Thomas. Not the qualifying they would have wanted to see, but this is definitely where they are in the race. Back into championship positions where you can expect to see these drivers consistently. And they are trying to make these intermediate tires work. Obviously, dragged 7 seconds off of the back of Enzo and the leaders due to the fighting efforts of Ryan Grob. And it was a little bit scrappy. It will be highly contested on if it was fully fair. But Ryan Grob was absolutely firm in his defense, and he's kept himself in this race by putting up that defense to get some kind of points, even at the if it is at the sacrifice of others.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it was a bit of a selfish move, though. I get why, but it's also the thing of it not very popular to do that. And sometimes it's just sort of driver's code almost. You don't do that. Unless it's the final few laps, you don't just hold everybody up, because now we've got very much 2 groups in this race. We've got we've got 3 groups. We've got the leaders, and then we've got the mid pack, and then we've got the back of the pack, and that's it. So it's kind of split everybody off quite a bit. And I mean, think about it. There's now growing to about. Look at the gap now. It's about 11 seconds, 11 to 12 seconds just to P4. Just P3 in this race. Then
yeah, it has.
Add in another 4.5 to the leader.
Yeah, it's completely changed the picture of this race through the efforts of Ryan Grob. We potentially could have seen some of these drivers wanting to race for the race victory, but now it's a race for P number 5. Still a decent finishing position for any of these drivers to come out with, especially with the qualifying positions that they came from, but not as exciting for these drivers as you said. Claudia, he's just pulling away up by another 5 temps now, and the gap is just settled for the rest of the grid as they are just finding a little bit of a rhythm in these intermediate conditions and getting comfortable with how much grip they can find out there on track. Still keeping wet at the moment, so it's not going to be any kind of issues with tire temps overheating, but potentially engine overheating can be a little bit of a factor in the wet conditions sometimes.
Not really, not when it's wet. I think, cooler, the track will cool down a bit, and we'll see engines won't struggle so much. So maybe through the dirty air, maybe very slightly, but I don't think too much. So I think at the moment we'll just have to wait and see. But I've got to say, Ivan Santamaria is doing an absolutely incredible race because he's P5 and he's got a front wing end plate missing.
Yeah, to have an end plate missing in these conditions, it's gonna be so much harder, but he's just keeping control of his car as we see Nailgelt come into the pit lane, dropping to back to P15, potentially trying to change onto another set of intermediates early in this race, but his race has not gone the way that he would have wanted, as we see Dark pick up a 3-second multiple warning penalties. Third driver to pick up some penalties in this race. Pretty clean overall, but we did see a couple of unfortunate racing penalties come through for Boba and Enzo, but as we said, that's kind of been neutralized by the fact that this huge gap has formed by Ryan Grubb.
I think, I think it's very much split the grid in half, and love him or hate him, I think it was a driver's decision in the moment, but still, I think there's going to be a bit of discussion about whether maybe there should be some level of rules around it. Because yes, it was defending position, but some of the defending got quite aggressive, and so potentially we might be waiting to see. I think some might say that there needs to be changes where people can't purposely hold up the grid. I've seen it in previous seasons. I saw it last season twice. Last season, actually, people called for. I saw some, people say about how maybe the rules need to change and stuff. But of course, it never went ahead. As we see, Dark Zanias pull it into the pits. See, already the first set of pit stops from inters to another set of inters is already happening.
Yeah, and this is somewhat early. Obviously, we saw the inter pit stop start coming in at lap 13 to 15. Lap 23 at the moment, so that will leave them with 13 laps left in this race, and they've only achieved about 10. So still want to extend it a little bit longer, whereas Dark and Nail have a long way to go on those tyres at the moment.
I think still, looking around though, when do you think Claudio is going to come in? Because everybody will follow what he does. He's got a 5-second lead now in this race, which is dominant. A 5-second lead. He's sort of a corner ahead of P2 and P3. When do you think we're going to see them come in? Because I think another maybe 3 to 4 laps before we see these guys come in.
Yeah, it's going to be enough for 3 to 4 laps. I got to agree on that one, because Claudio just doesn't need to pit if no one's keeping pace with him. And because obviously if he pits, he's going to come out into this pack at the moment. And with how racy some of these drivers have shown themselves to be, it's a risk that he might not want to take. He's going to have to get scrappy. Yes, it will be on fresh intermediates and he'll have a lot more grip than these warm ones, but it's just a risk that he doesn't need to take. So he might just stay out in front until a gap forms where he can pit safely.
I think it's always difficult though, but we have just seen on this latest lap, Boba's just closed in by about 0.4 of a second in the last lap. So maybe Boba picking up the pace slightly in the Aston Martin.
Yeah, he is currently sat in that P2 position, trying to make something work currently at 4.7 seconds. He said made a bit of a margin into Claudio
Whoa.
as Lucas is now set behind, but he picks up another 3-second penalty, and that now brings him up to 6, tied with Enzo.
That's going to drop him down to P3. So Enzo has a chance to get onto the podium, but the problem is Enzo's all the way 3 points. He's over 4 seconds behind Boba, so there's going to be a bit of time. But Enzo has been catching up. We have noticed he's been catching bit by bit. He's closed in by about a second in the last couple of laps, so he is starting to close that gap down, but not by a lot.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to the Santa Maria point. He is driving this so well. He is saving his ERS so effectively with this broken wing, and it's just meaning no one can... Jan can't make any kind of inroads in him onto this main straight. And he's just defending it so well, moving to the right early on the straight, then getting back over to make the corners clean for himself before the braking zone. And it's just a decent drive with a compromised car, and it's exactly what you need to do. And with how this race is turning out, this is a clinical way of defending your position with a broken wing for Santa Maria.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really is. I think he's putting on a great show here. He's showing incredible pace. But I do think part of it also comes down to the fact that Jan Svidilic is kind of just waiting behind and not really pushing.
Yeah, he's not done a huge, just burst of ERS deployment down the entire back straight. It would leave him very open to an attack if he was to deploy it and not make the overtake successful. So he might just be settling him to this P number 6 until we get later in this race. As you said, it's intermediate conditions. These drivers still have 10 laps to go, as Tristan Janssen picks up a 3-second penalty down in P number 9. That will drop him outside of P9, but it won't drop him outside of the top 10 positions with that 5-second gap down to Bennett Hadder in P11.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. Bennett Hader, let's have a talk about him. Well, what is there to talk about? I don't know whether it's just me or he's been very quiet in kind of in the middle of nowhere this entire race. He's just kind of been on his own, as you can see Spezzi now goes past Bennett Hader. What do you think?
Yeah, both of these Ferrari drivers kind of not able to find any kind of pace this qualifying, this race either. Both circulating just out on the back of the field, and Hadder is the perfect example of that. Spezzi catches up to him, and Spezzi is by him within a very short amount of time, and Bennett Hadder just gets on with his day, keeps it clean, and is just continuing to circulate. And with a lack of huge collisions or anything to bring him back into this game, it's been a little bit of a shadow showing so far.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of drivers at the moment who have the skill like Bennett Hader. I've seen him previously. He's got pace behind him. He's very quick, but it's the unlucky thing of being on the slightly slower end of Tier 3. We see drivers like Ryan Grob, proven drivers in WR, Ryan Grob, Tumas Lamin, Jan Svidilic, Ivan Santamaria, Enzo Sabaton, Lucas, Boba, Claudio Diaz, Tristan Janssen, Diego Ferrer, Neo Gout, Daniel Goshawk, a lot of proven drivers who have proven that they can perform at just that sort of high point. But then we've got Bennett Hader, who kind of sits in a weird area that he's kind of sitting at that sort of weird, maybe 14th, 15th quickest in the tier. He's kind of sitting in a funny place where he's close enough to maybe get points, but he's not far enough away. The thing is, he's not far enough away to say he can't get points, but he's not close enough to get points, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I think he's
on the bubble at the moment to do anything else. But as you said, these top drivers who have scored points and got some decent results, who are in this race today, have shown their talents in many ways, with either decent qualifying efforts or by just making their hard tires work. It's unfortunate for Niall Gout and Jonas Oppo at the moment, down in P14 and 15. Both of those drivers would have won more out of this race, as Spezzi picks up his 3-second penalty. So he was closing that gap down to Diego Ferrer, but now his efforts have been made a hell of a lot harder with that 3-second penalty.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real anyway. 4.7 seconds with 8 laps to go in this race. Please tell me, when do you think, just as a question, when did you think that he would be able to close up that much? He's going to have to gain, about half a second a lap on average, and that's just not happening. We're not seeing any driver do that.
Although when we talk about gaps closing down, Bubba has now dragged that down to 2.1 seconds to Claudio Diaz on the front of the grid. And he's starting to actually put on a little bit of pressure now. He's getting closer a little bit consistently. But yeah, as you said, he still has that penalty. But he has now starting. Yeah, it's 6 seconds, as you said. It's a case of he knows he needs to push, and so he is starting to do so. But it's just not going to help his position. He's still going to drop back down to P3 as it stands.
But think about
and then
could I just say, just to think about this. Claudio has sat in the lead comfortably for 15 laps now. He would have saved his tyres. His tyres won't be entirely burnt up, and you can see that's shown by Boba going into the pits.
Yeah, Boba first to move into the pit lane. He's the one that makes the call to pit with only 7 laps remaining now as we start lap 29. It'll be interesting to see if anyone else does follow on in, as you do see Ryan Grob come into the pit lane as well, now dropping down the order. But no one else at the moment has reacted to this pit. But it will be interesting to see. Do you think anyone else will react to these pits, or just try and hold on for the rest of the race?
I could see, to some degree, I could see Claudio doing it. Because think about it, 8 seconds, added on with a 2.5. He's already looking at 11, and then added on with another 5. So he's got 15 seconds, and it's about a 16-second pit window. So if other people stop, he could do it and still come out leading this race.
Yeah, as you said, Claudio might just react to see if everyone else pits at this point.
And it means he confirms his lead to the end as well.
Yeah, he's put himself in a position where he can just react to offers. But he is starting to slip and slide quite a bit at the moment on this current lap. Riding on board with him, he does opt into the pit lane, and you can see that he is starting to struggle on these tyres. Lucas behind will also react, and it seems to be the same for Enzo as well. Probably going to be the same for the rest of the pack, who are 9 seconds adrift of this leading trio.
Yeah, there you go. Fresh set of intermediates go on to the RB. As you can see, Tumas Laminin, though, staying out on his intermediates as he takes the lead, and he's looking for that second win.
Yeah, a little bit of a gambit potentially from the drivers who do decide to stick out, as Thomas Lammert comes out in the lead at the moment.
Boba. Look at Boba!
Yeah, Boba with that pit stop has actually caught up all the way onto Claudio Diaz, but not in front of him. And they have Tristan Janssen. There's a bit of traffic to fight around. So there might be some action here for these two drivers to get through, as it's going to be from either side around Tristan Janssen. Both drivers getting through into one corner on those fresh tires, just making it look easy, like he's a sitting duck. But now Boba are pressuring Claudio to push him round the circuits. Claudio now has to respond with some kind of pace like he did in the early stage of the intermediate running. And he's already looking comfortable on these new tyres.
And look at that,
pushing
Boba
through
struggling.
the S's. And Boba in the dirty air and the wake of the car in front, struggling to find the grip that Claudio is able to find. And with the pace that he's setting, Thomas Laminin is not going to be in P number 1 for long, as the grip difference is so astounding in behalf of these two drivers who have just pit. And it's going to be a hold on for dear life from Thomas Lamine and Tristan Janssen to try and drag something else. But as we say that, Tristan Janssen does come into the pits, which just leaves Thomas Lamine 5 laps to the end to see if he wants to pit or just try and stay out in front.
I'd say Thomas Lammen has another 2 laps in the lead, and then he'll lose the lead. So it will very much come down to a final 3-lap showdown, I think. Final 3-4 laps. But we'll have to wait and see because, of course, you've just seen another 4/10 chunk taken out of him by Claudio through just the first 3 corners. So it's clear to see that Aston Martin's not quickest, but he's getting some laps on the board. Some laps led once again this week. Very interesting because Thomas Lammen actually became one of the only drivers in Tier 3 to not lead a single lap of a race and win. And still win. From not leading a single lap. As he goes off the track. So he's got some interesting records, I must say. He's got some interesting records, but he is one of the most experienced drivers on this grid. As Jonas Orpel battling, and there goes Ryan Grob as well, battling with Bennett Hader. And Ryan Grob up to P11. But you see, those fresh inters haven't worked for Ryan Grob.
Yeah, no, didn't work for Ryan Grubb quite effectively. But Jonas Orpel, now Gout and Dark on the older intermediates, but they aren't quite as old as what the drivers were on before. Now holding up the pack quite a lot behind Enzo, as Thomas Lammen gets overtaken by Claudia. But Claudia actually finding a bit of a struggle on the back end, so Thomas Lammen fights back at him, which is going to let Bubba into the lead of this race. Now into turn number 4. Bubba keeps the lead as Bennett Hader comes into the pit to retire, and they're still side by side. Bubba's going to get onto the outside, get a little bit of a twitch, and Claudia's going to try and send it down the inside on the switchback effort. He's now going to get back into the lead as Bubba drifts off of the circuit. They both get past Thomas Lammen then, but a little bit of action coming off of the back end as further down the grid. Now Gout trying to hold on to position, does lose out to Jan and Santa Maria down into P number 9 as Jonas also trying to defend from Ryan Grob, who makes his way through. And now it's Dark as Aeneas getting stared down by Santa Maria and Jan, trying to get back into P6 and P7.
I've got to say, Claudio, though, with an incredible bit of battling there. Very intelligent driving from Claudio there. Catching out Boba a bit, using the switchback, keeping the car there. Some real confidence from our race leader tonight. I've got to say, he's had some incredible confidence from our race leader and pole sitter, of course.
Yeah, obviously, he's confident on his intermediates. It's clear that he knows what he's doing, and he easily dispatched of the efforts of Bubba, as it's still now Gout now getting chased down by Ryan Grubb, trying to make a dent forward, while in front of him, Ivan is going to go down the inside and make the move stick. Nyan holds onto P9 for one more lap, and he's still got 4 more to go.
Yeah, he's still got a few more laps to go. So does everybody, but I think for Ivan, he's putting in a pretty strong race at the moment, and that gap is going to help him a bit. But I've got to say, Jan Svidilic, this race has proven that he can just about hold on to a chance. As Ryan Grubb, by the way, looking for a move on Nail Gout. Look at that, a ballsy move on the brakes. And up the inside into the double right-hander. And there goes Ryan Grubb up into P9, now just chasing down the next 2 drivers in front.
Yeah, we're looking for a bit more of some side-by-side action, and Ryan Grob does bring it to us, but the track is drying out compared to what it was, so potentially some more grip coming to the drivers. We won't be seeing some dry tires coming out, but still, even so, a little bit more grip. Yeah, he picks up a 9-second gap, but currently the gap behind him is 11 seconds. So this might be able to give Thomas Lamine a comfortable P4 finish, so long as he doesn't have a huge drop-off in tire pace. But it's definitely now on the margin, on the cusp. Can Ivan chase down 2 seconds to get within that window of Enzo?
He's already gained 2/10 in the last sector alone, by the way. So he's pushing everything he's got. So is Jan Svidilic. They both want that chance. And for Enzo Sabaton, it's a rather important one. And same for Jan Svidilic, because if Jan Svidilic is able to close up enough, that could lead to ultimately Enzo Sabaton losing the championship lead.
Yeah, Jan tied the championship lead in that previous round with that P2 finish, while Enzo was down in P15 in Jeddah. Whereas this time, it might be a chance to get in front of Enzo, but you've got to find enough pace to be able to break that margin in the first place. But the cards now definitely in favor as a free wide, huge slide off of the track goes Giannis Uppel, going side by side with both of the Hasses through that tight section. As Ryan Grob tries to send it down the inside of Dark as well for the S's, switches back, deploys the ERS, and will find himself up into P number 8.
Yeah, and look at Ivan Santamaria, though. He's just lost 4/10 in the last sector to Enzo Sebastian, so it's clear to see the pace just isn't there in the Red Bull, but it is definitely there for Jan Svedilic because he's just closed in by half a second this lap alone.
Yeah, he's definitely catching in onto Ivan as Jonas Uppel struggling at the back of the grid, picking up the penalty. He's looking to retire, but it's now still on the efforts of Dark to defend his P9 position. But right now it's to Nail Gout, who's in that P10. Points on the board for Nail Gout at the back end. Not the normal consistency from him, but still.
Look at the lead. Look at the front two. Tenths apart. Boba almost just went for a move through the double right-hander. He's got that penalty, but for him, this is survival because if he's more than 6 seconds ahead of Tuomas Lamminen, he holds on to a podium.
Yeah, he does have to find 6 seconds, and it's on the bubble. Claudio seems to have the pace to keep pulling that gap, so even if he's just on the back of Claudio, Boba might still be able to find himself on this P3 podium, and that margin currently is in that safety net as well. So Boba making his way back into the top 3 positions after the pit stop, but still going to be currently losing out to Lucas, but still wants to put on an effort to Claudio on the racetrack. It might not be for position after the race, but just that racing spirit, you would love to see him still put on an effort as Enzo ends up passing Tuomas Lamminen on track.
But it's side-by-side
effort at the moment going into turn number 1. The ERS deployment brings him back alongside, but the tyres not enough to defend the position. And around the outside, Enzo gets to finish off the overtake cleanly and get up into P number 4 on track.
But there's a bit of a worry because Ivan Santamaria just closed up by 1.5 seconds in the last sector, by the way. He just closed up by that much. It's at 9.9 seconds. Remember, it went over to 11 seconds. Do I think he'll be able to close up? I don't think so, but it definitely is coming down.
Yeah, a fine margin to play for on this last lap. Definitely is on the margin, but you got to factor in the gap between Tuomas Lamminen and Ivan, as Thomas is struggling on those tires. He might even have a puncture on the rear left. It looks semi-deflated. As it does puncture. He's got an 8-second margin.
We got to look to the lead.
He's going to spin. As at the lead, Claudio is going to come across the line with P number 1 sliding as he finishes. Boba is going to come across the line, but fall to P3 as Lucas finds himself at P number 2. Enzo will find himself with that P number 4, and Tuomas Lamminen does find a puncture that will end up in disaster, that will allow Ivan to come across with that damaged wing in P number 5, Jan into P number 6. Dark picks up a penalty, is at P number 8 across the line, but will drop out of the points. Diego Farrow in P8 and Ryan Grob in P number 7. Now Gelt finds himself somehow with some points at the end of this race, and rounded out by Spezzi in the Haas for P number 10.
Very interesting end to the race. Incredibly interesting end to the race there. So as you can see, it is Claudio who wins once again this season. 2nd win of the season. First driver to achieve 2 victories. And there he goes. He gets up there.
It was a clinical effort during the race. He just held onto the front, didn't pick up any penalties, had immense pace on the intermediate tyres, and just comes out on top. And 2 races entered, 2 races won now for Claudio Diaz. That shoots him up to 50 points. And what a championship outing from him.
Let's go through the order of the grid Pole to victory, it's Claudio Diaz who wins in Mexico, followed by Lucas in second, Boba in third, Enzo Sabaton, the championship leader, in fourth, Ivan Santamaria in fifth, Jan Fidilic closely chasing the championship leader in sixth, Ryan Grob in seventh, Diego Ferrer in eighth, Neil Gout in ninth, and the final points position to Spezzi, followed by Darts Aeneas, Tristan Janssen, and Tumas Launen, with the retirements being Jonas Orpel, Bennett Hayder, and Daniel Goshawk. And that is that for this evening for racing. But we do have one thing to do. We do have one thing, and that is interviews. Let's see. Does anybody want an interview this evening? We'll have to see. Does anybody want an interview?
Just doing the maths quickly on the top of my head, that will put Claudio into P number 1 in the standings by 1 point over Enzo Sabatino, who will be on 49 points with those 12 points picked up in P number 4, which is a huge and impressive feat from Claudio to be able to get himself into P1 in the standings off of only 2 entries.
Of course, it is brilliant, but I've got to say, you can't particularly win a championship that way, though. So, he'll be hoping maybe he can keep his run going that way. Like that, for as long as he can. Claudio, our race winner, can't join us for an interview. So, I am sad that our race winner can't. We'll be waiting to see, can anybody else join us for a lovely interview this evening? Or are we going to go interviewless for the first time this season? I'm waiting to see, what does Lucas say? Because usually Boba doesn't join us for interviews, so. But Lucas will join us. He will join us for a lovely interview. So let's go to the interviews. The lovely interview screen, as you can see. And wait for Lucas to join the waiting for interviews, and then we'll drag him in as soon as possible, as soon as he does get into it, if he does finally reach it at some point. And he's still not in there, but we'll wait a little bit longer. We'll wait and see. As he was on the podium. So, very close day. A very, very close day in the end.
Yeah, a very interesting race. Obviously, a huge change up made by that rain. And it will be interesting to see how that affected their approach to this race. But we still wait on them to be able to be here for the interview. Any quick thoughts before they do join us from you?
I think it was a very interesting race. I think it was a very straightforward race, though. I think everybody can agree. It was a very straightforward race. I don't think there was anything. I think the standout drive. I think everybody could say standout drive from Claudio and stuff, but I will just say Ryan Grob was very much the driver who very much helped that. So, I think if Ryan Grob didn't hold up the pack, I think we would have had a much closer race, especially, I think, for the race lead.
Yeah, and it would have changed the meaning of the penalties drastically as well for that of Enzo and Boba, potentially, as they would have dropped maybe more positions than what they did, especially with the pace that Ivan and Jan did show once they finally got out in front of that of Ryan Grob.
Yeah, just waiting on Lucas, who so far hasn't joined yet. We'll go back to the comms box screen while we wait. We'll wait a few more minutes, and then we shall see. Boba doesn't really do interviews, so I know he won't be joining us. Yeah, I think altogether, drive of the day for me, I've got to give it to Claudio. There's nobody else really I could give driver of the day to.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that one. It's just a clinical lead to finish style of race, and I'm heavily appreciative of when people can just execute the strategy that is laid out in front of them.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's but it's just about being consistent. And I said this, you know, in qualifying about the track, you just have to be consistent. That's all it is. That's the main thing. So that's what it's mostly about, you know. Which is always like that. To be fair, you know, you just gotta think about it in that way, that it's just about consistency. So
Yeah, as obviously with Mexico now over, it is a four races down in the championship. If you look at the effort tiers, there will be 5 races in, so a little bit of a higher structure to be found, but still got those drivers at the top of the standings. Claudio, Enzo, and Yan tight on the championship, only roughly 7 points separating them at the top, and they're consistent points performances from almost all of them as well.
yeah, in the end, a very tough one for most. At the moment, still nobody's in the waiting for interview box, so I'm a bit sad about that. So I don't think we'll be getting any interviews today, sadly. But with that, that is the end of tonight's race. Thank you to everybody for watching. It's absolutely been brilliant again. Back again tonight. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to WR here on YouTube. Also make sure to click on the notification bell to know about all the racing we do, from World to PC to console. Just for all of it. Just make sure you have it all, because there's so much racing to choose from. Also make sure to go and follow us on TikTok, as you can see above myself, World Online Racing F1, and on X or Twitter, either one you want to call it, at WR League. So make sure to go and do that. And of course, as you can see, above Hyper, or really above Welterum, World Online Racing. So make sure to do all of that. Also, big thanks to the drivers, of course. Absolutely brilliant today. Some really strong racing we've seen in tough conditions. And also thank you to you, Welterum, for joining me this evening. Almost had to do commentary alone, but it's been great having you. And have you got any last words? Not of your life, but of the stream.
It's been a pleasure to join you for tier number 3, and it's been a pleasure to watch a full race of these spectacular drivers. And the tension in this championship is always worthwhile to tune back in for.
Yeah, it really is. Ultimately, with that, thank you to everybody for watching, and I will see you once again next Monday when we go to, of course, the track of Canada for round number 6 of the season, and then Austria before Christmas. Then we'll return in the new year on January the 5th for Bahrain, then China, and then Sao Paulo to end off the season. With that, thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye. Thank you.